Hey guys, and welcome back. So today we're going to be just doing a little bit more practice with circles. Again, this is something you should have learned in geometry, but we're just going to get a little bit more practice with this equation. So now you should remember from our last lesson, the equation for a circle is x minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared is equal to r squared, where h and k are the coordinate elements for the center of the circle, and r is the radius. So for our first practice question, we're going to convert the following equation into center radius form, so this equation up here. So if you notice, we're going to have to complete the square here twice. So I'm going to rewrite this out in a better format, where I have 4x squared minus 4x plus blank. I'll have plus 4y squared plus blank. Move that negative 59 over. So I'll have 59 plus blank plus blank. Okay, well, let's see. For this first part, I'm actually going to factor out a 4. So I'll have 4 times x squared minus x. Include that plus blank. And then over here, I'm also going to take out a 4. So I'll have 4 times y squared plus blank is equal to 59 plus my 2 blanks here. Now, we're actually going to start completing the square. So here, leave that 4 out front. I have x minus 1/2 squared, right? Because we're halving the 1, so this is 1/2 squared. 1/2 squared is 1/4. Now be careful. I have to multiply. See how there's a 4 out front and it really would be getting distributed? If I'm going to be multiplying by 4 times 1/4 on the left-hand side, I need to be multiplying by 4 times 1/4 on the right-hand side. So we have to include 4 times the 1/4 that's in the box here, okay? And then I have plus 4 times, this is just going to stay as y squared because, guys, my b value here is plus 0x plus 0, right? And then plus c. And half of 0 is 0, and 0 squared is 0. So these are really just zeros, so I don't care about that. All right, so let's clean this up a little bit. So we have this is equal to 59 plus 4 times 1/4 is 60. So now I'm looking at 4 times x minus 1/2 squared plus 4 times y squared is equal to 60. I want to get rid of these 4s, so I'll divide everything out by 4. And I'll be left with x minus 1/2 squared plus, really I could write this as y minus 0 squared is equal to 15, because this is just y squared. So the center, if I converted this into center radius form, well, there's my equation for center radius form. And now the actual center and the radius of the circle, well, the center is going to be at 1/2 comma 0. And then the radius is going to be, remember, this is equal to r squared. So we have to square root that. So the radius is going to be the square root of 15. All right, guys, so that's just our little warm-up activity. Again, practicing with complete the square. All right, let's take a look at a few more examples. So now we got some critical thinking, and I think maybe that warm-up might have been probably one of the more challenging problems on here. So if you were having a little bit of difficulty with this, we're going to ease into some maybe lighter problems here. So for the first one, we're going to write the equation of the circle if the center is translated by 6 to the right and 3 units down. So I'm just going to write my standard equation here, right? If I wanted to, I could really write this as x minus 0 squared plus y minus 0 squared equals 16. So I know that this is centered currently at 0, 0 with a radius of 4. Because remember, we take the square root of that value, okay? All right, and we want to translate the center to the right by 6 and then down by 3. So this is going to go right by 6, down by 3. So my new center will be at 6, negative 3. So if that's my new center, well, let's write that new equation. So this should be pretty straightforward. We'll have x minus 6 quantity squared plus y plus 3 quantity squared is equal to 16. So there you have it. There's your new equation. Nothing too complicated. All right, let's move on. Let's take a look at question 2. So for question 2, we're going to write the equation of a circle centered at 2, -5, and then the point on the circle is at -7, -1. So this is my center. So I already know when I write the equation of a circle, I have x minus 2 squared plus y plus 5 quantity squared is equal to whatever that radius squared is going to be. So we got to find out what the radius is going to be. Now, we have the point on the circle. So if I know a point on the circle, and I'm just going to make a little rough sketch here. Okay, so I roughly just kind of drew out a circle centered at 2, -5, and then the point on the circle is at -7, -1. Now, if I'm at the center of the circle and I extend all the way to the point on the circle, this is our radius, guys. So we need to do a little bit of distance formula here to get what that radius length is. So we know distance formula is equal to the square root of the change in x, so we'll do -7 minus 2 squared, plus the change in y, which is -1 minus a -5, so that's really plus 5 squared. I'll get my distance to be the square root of, this is really -7 minus 2 is -9. -9 squared is 81, plus I have -1 plus 5 is 4. 4 squared is 16. So my distance, which is equivalent to the radius in this case, is going to be the square root of 97. Now that's my radius, square root of 97. And when we write our equation, we write it as r squared. So we'll write r squared is equal to 97. So instead of equals r squared here, now we know that that equals 97. And there's your answer, guys. That's it. That's all we have to do. Just got to use a little bit of geometry tools that hopefully we have caught up a little bit now on, especially since our last lesson. Alrighty. Ooh, questions 3 and 4. I love these questions, and you're going to see why. All right, so for question 3, we're going to write the equation of a circle centered at the following point. So again, I already know part of my equation here, right? That's part of the center form of a circle. I give you the circumference. Circumference. Does anyone remember the formula for circumference? Yes, maybe? No? Okay. Circumference is equal to pi times the diameter, or 2 pi times r. Now, which of these is probably going to be more helpful if I want the radius squared? Probably going to use this one here. It doesn't make a difference, though. You'll still get the same answer in the end. Radius is twice the diameter, okay? So if I know the circumference is 8 pi, and I know the equation is 2 pi r, right? I just plugged in. Well, I have a pi on both sides, so that goes away. I'll divide by 2, and I know my radius is 4. So this r squared here is going to be 4 squared, which is 16. So let's write this equals 16. And that's it. That's your equation of the circle, centered at -512 at a circumference of 8 pi, indicating that its radius is 4. Okay. So far, so good. Let's take a look at question 4. So for question 4, we're going to write the equation of a circle centered at -11, -14. So let's write, we have x plus 11 squared plus y plus 14 squared is going to equal whatever the radius is. Now, if you notice, they give you the area. Does anyone remember the area of a circle? I know you know it. Area is equal to pi r squared. So if I know the formula for area is pi r squared, and I know the area is 16 pi, well, I've got pi on either side, so those go away. And now I'll have the radius squared equals 16, indicating my radius is equal to 4. So again, we're going to replace r squared with 4 squared, which is 16. So this is x plus 11 quantity squared plus y plus 14 quantity squared is equal to 16. And there you guys have it. Why don't you guys give question 5 a try? I'll read it out loud for us, and you're going to try this one on your own. So you're going to write the equation of a circle whose diameters, endpoints are 4, -1, and -6, 7. So those are the endpoints on the circle, and that's for the diameter. So you guys are going to want to probably give yourself a sketch. So pause the video here and let's see if we get the same thing. Okay, so this is my rough sketch. I have the endpoints drawn where we're told that from here to here is the diameter, right? That's my line right here. Okay. Now, if you're able to figure out the diameter, well, after you figure out the diameter, how can you get the radius? Remembering, and I'm just going to approximate right here that that's maybe roughly the center. Approximate. Might be a little off. This is not drawn to scale, obviously. So once I find the center, once I find that center of x, y, I can figure out the radius by taking half of this distance, right? All right. So first I'm going to do the distance formula to get the length from here all the way to here. So let's do that. Okay, so now that I know my diameter is the square root of 164, I'm going to take half of that to get the radius. So I know my radius is the square root of 164 over 2. Now, to figure out the center, we need to use the midpoint formula, guys. I want to know what that center is. So we're going to use the midpoint formula. So the center, to get the midpoint, we average the x values. So I have -6 plus 4. I'm going to average that. And I have 7 plus -1 over 2. We're going to average that. I'll get my center to be at -6 plus 4 is -2. Half of -2 is -1. 7 plus -1 is 6. 6 over 2 is 3. So there's my center, and I have my radius. So let's write our equation. So I'll have x plus 1 quantity squared plus y minus 3 quantity squared is equal to, now it's the radius squared. So it's that square root of 164 over 2 that's squared. So I'm actually going to simplify that. 1 square root of 164 over 2 squared is actually the same thing as 164 over 4. And 164 over 4 is actually 41. So I'm going to replace this with the number 41. And that is our final answer for question 5. All right, let's take a look at question 6. So if you want to erase what you have here, I accidentally took over a little bit too much space. But so for question 6, we have what is the center and radius of the circle that is translated 5 units left and then 4 units down. So we already know from this equation, hopefully we can tell that the center right now is at -5, -7, and then the radius is at the square root of 36, which is 6. Now I want to translate this 5 units left and 4 units down. So I'm going to go 5 units left, 4 units down. So my new center is going to be at -10, -11. Radius stays the same, guys. It doesn't change. So this is actually a quick and easy one. So my new equation will end up being x plus 10 quantity squared plus y plus 11 quantity squared is equal to 36. So that's your equation. All right, let's move on. Question 7, we're almost done. This is actually a shorter lesson than most. This is just additional practice with circles. All right, so for question 7, I want to find the equation of a circle whose diameter's endpoints are given. So guys, you actually can do this. We just did a question just like it right here, like number 5. So I'm actually going to let you do this totally on your own, and let's see if we get the same solutions. All right, so just a little quick drawing here. Again, you should have paused the video to do this by yourself first, but I just sketched out my endpoints at -311 and 3, -13. Roughly, if I go halfway, that's probably where my center is going to be. Again, this is just a sketch. So maybe that's my center at x, y, just to give me an idea. Once I know, so if this is my diameter, right? If this is my diameter, and I can figure out what this halfway mark is, that will get me the center. So if I have my midpoint formula, if I use the midpoint formula, I can get the center. And if I use the distance formula, that will get me the length of the entire diameter. And remembering, a diameter is twice the length of a radius. So we would just have to cut that diameter length in half to get our radius value. All right, so I'm going to post my calculations here, but hopefully you had the same thing. Okay, so I have my center is at 0, -1, and my radius is the square root of 612 over 2. So I'm going to start by writing out my formula. I apologize for the lack of space here. So my equation for center radius form, we have x minus 0 squared plus y plus 1 squared is equal to, now it's the radius squared, so it's the square root of 612 over 2 squared, and I'm going to do a little side work here. Square root of 612 over 2 squared is actually 612 over 4, which when simplified, that ends up being 153. So I'm just going to replace this with the number 153. And that's my final answer for question 7. Okay, guys, we're almost done. We just have 8 and 9, and you guys are all good to go. All right, so make sure you have this written. This was all for question 7. Oh, actually, that's pretty drawn to scale, too. Look at that. I think I did that for the other question, too. That's roughly at 0, -1 for the center. Let's see for the other one. Oh, yeah. That's roughly at -1, 3. Oh, not a bad drawing. Good job, Ms. Tomei. All right. Let's take a look at questions 8 and 9, and then you guys are all good to go. All right, so for question 8, we're given the center of a circle, and we're given an endpoint that's on the circle. So here's the center. So I'm already going to write out, I have x minus 14 quantity squared plus y minus 17 quantity squared is going to equal that radius squared. And it has this point on the circle. So if I have my center and then a point on the circle, right, this will be my radius. So I just got to take the distance. So let me use my distance formula here. I have the square root of, let's do 15 minus 14 quantity squared plus 17 minus 17 quantity squared. I'll get my distance to be the square root of 1 squared, and the square root of 1 squared, with that plus 0 squared, is just 1. So that radius is 1. And 1 squared is 1. This just equals 1. Actually, nice and easy. Alrighty. Let's conclude with question 9, guys. You got to do this one. All right, stay with me. For question 9, we have to complete the square. All right. So let's set this up. Let's get this into a nice format. So we're given the following in center. We want to get this into center radius form. And eventually it's going to be translated 2 units to the right and 4 units down. Okay, so let me reorganize here. I have x squared plus 14x plus blank. I have plus y squared plus 12y plus blank is going to equal -76 plus blank plus blank. Okay, so I have 2 blanks on either side. Let's start to complete the square. So we'll have x plus 7 squared, so that's plus 49, plus 49. I have y plus 6 squared. Remember, we have it, square it. Have it, square it. Have it, square it. So that's 36. And when I sum what's on the right-hand side, -76 plus 49 plus 36 ends up being 9. And then you guys have it. Right now this thing is centered at -7, -6 with a radius of 3. And now last step that we have to do is we're just going to translate it 2 units to the right and 4 units down. So we're going to go 2 units right, 4 units down. So here's my new center. My new center will be at -5, -10. Again, the radius still stays 3. Nothing happens there. And my final equation is going to look like x plus 5 squared plus y plus 10 squared is equal to 9. There's your equation that's been recentered based on the translation. All right, guys, I hope you found this video helpful. Hopefully this was a little bit more review than anything new. All right, stay tuned for more videos this week. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.